Hello, and welcome to another fully live episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinzie. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today we're going live a little late as usual, and unfortunately without our beloved Killian to talk about the hacker news of the week, talk about some cool hacker tools, and also some interesting hacks that I found related to 3D printing. So welcome everyone today. Gonna get started, as I said, a little bit later, but today is the very first day of Hackaday Supercon. I have not checked in yet. Instead, I am trying to complete a SAO. We'll call it a simple add-on, but it has many names. And I found a pretty remarkable trick for being able to make an SAO at the very last minute that can still go in the SAO contest. So also, hello, Q. Good to see you in the chat. I want to talk about this incredibly cool SAO last minute adapter kind of deal. So this is a way that you can make a badge compatible SAO. And if you haven't heard of an SAO, we've been talking about them for the last couple of weeks in the run up to Hackaday Supercon, because this year at Hackaday Supercon, it's all about the add-ons. So these have a kind of standardized connector. They plug into a larger badge and then they do something. At Supercon headquarters, I was able to see that they have these really cool add-ons that are both inputs and outputs, right? So we've got some of them that are outputs, they have LEDs on them, and some of them have like capacitive touch. And I noticed that there was one in particular where you could like kind of move your finger around one of the SAOs and it would turn up and down the brightness on a different SAO. So these things are really cool. They can be interconnected. They can be as complicated as you want to make them, but they do require you to turn in a printed circuit board on time. Now, not everybody is able to do that. You know, some people have other stuff going on. So yeah, like there are some other options out there, and I wanted to show one of them off that I found to be pretty cool. So first, I'm just going to show off the design. Then I'm going to show off the actual GitHub page. But let's go ahead and share. On my Bamboo printer, I just printed one of these. I've got one in my hand, and you can see that it's basically an adapter that is in the size and shape of a SAO. So this is the standardized connector that these use, but it has kind of like a breakout here, and this little area actually is able to have wires go through it. So the idea is you have an LED that is sticking out on this side. You have a large flat surface, which you can apply like a sticker or something else to, and then on the other side, you have the ability to have wiring going from the LED that's kind of like hidden underneath here and goes into a connector. So if you have a 3D printer and you wanted to make your own SAO, this is a way that you could actually do that. And this took me 11 minutes of printing time. So really not a tremendous investment. I would say for people who frequently miss the deadline or promise to make an SAO and then don't have time to do it, this might be a lifesaver. So I want to show off the GitHub project because I think that it was probably one of the better documented ones I've seen for one of these sorts of things. Let's see. I think it is, no, yes. So this is called, I believe, the shittiest add-on of SAOs. So this is a 3D printable SAO that has a single blinking light and uses no PCB. So we've got our LED, we've got this radio ham sticker that was made, and we've got our kind of guide here. So in order to do this, you first need a blinking LED. That means there's no circuit in here that's causing the LED to blink. There's plenty of types of LEDs that will like change color and stuff. And that's, pretty much all you need for this. So they recommend that you use like non-conductive epoxy, but I can also just use, glue. And that has usually worked for me. There's other things you can use as well to adhere this all together. Not a huge deal. So to assemble it, you put an LED through here. You bend the legs down, you put them through, you clip them, and then it looks like you just solder them to these pin headers in a way that allows you to connect them without disrupting anything on the backside. So on the backside is where the connections are made. This then seems like it's filled in by epoxy, which is the one part where I am far too lazy to do. So we'll see if there's some way I can hack this to be even lazier And this is compatible with the new SAO version. So you can see kind of like a corresponding, like, you know, how everything is wired together here. So this is how you can also tell where the 3.3 volt pin is, which is very important. So for this, I also noticed that there's no resistor here. So these people are just going straight for it with the 3.3 on this LED. Some people might say that that's not proper, but I don't care. I love this project. I think it's great. So they glued this flat basically, and then put a sticker over it. And then they ended up with a functional SAO. So if you are, you know, in a hurry, like I am sometimes, this is something that might actually be a great option for you. Now, for me, I'm also really interested in potentially making this into a larger piece that has some of that custom 3D printing on it. Now, there's a number of ways you could accomplish this. One of them is a Lithophane. So if you shorten these LEDs and made it so, these LED leads and made it so the LED was in the back here, you might also be able to create a color Lithophane. So I wanted to shout out these Lithophanes as something that I just tried to show one off on the screen. It didn't really work, but I want to show off what they look like when they're printing. This is like an album cover from a song I like, and it came out pretty well, I have to say. This is a multicolor process. You go through this color Lithophane maker. And the other prerequisite to this is that you need to have CYMK printer filament. Sorry, one second. So if you have the correct printer filament, then it'll basically print out multiple layers with each color. And when the light shines through it, it looks very much like the original image. And this is something I was really excited to see because I got the correct filament for this. I wanted to try out making a Lithophane, and I wanted to see how annoying or complicated it was. And it turns out it was not annoying or complicated at all. I was able to just take a PNG image, drop it in here, lightly edit this according to a YouTube tutorial I found. Oh, actually, no, that's what I found. If I tried to do this with a PNG file, it would just download nothing. As soon as I switched to a JPEG file, then it worked just fine. So that is a little note. Having tried this myself, it does require a JPEG file. But yeah, if you have any sort of color Lithophane that you want to make, then this is able to do it. So if I wanted to make, like, for example, a nightlight SAO that has like a Lithophane that it glows through, then I could combine these two things to make something really cool. Yeah, so those are some of my favorite tools that I found this week. I was really enchanted to see that even anybody who has seriously slacked on getting their like SAO for the conference can still make something if they have a 3D printer, and then maybe they could even just draw on this. I don't know, like if you just put one of those like postal labels on top, cut it out, and then draw something cool, like I'm sure you could still win the SAO contest. Let's see. Oh, also, thank you for letting me know that there might be a problem with the sponsor link, veronis.com/KODY. Is it working? Well, I guess we'll find out. Also, yes, good to have everybody in the live chat. Every once in a while, I wonder why like something's not working, and usually I find out about it on the chats. Well, okay, it works for me. So thank you for letting me know about veronis.com/Kody. It does need to be www.veronis.com/Kody. That's KODY. But yeah, seems to be working at the moment, but let me know if it's not. So from James, I would love to see a 3D printed circuit where you inject conductive fluid, like a conductive ink that sends that makes a permanent circuit. Yeah, so like what's really interesting is I think that right now with the various types of filament you can switch to, we already have filament that is designed to like melt away, like support filament that is designed to be easier to remove than traditional filament. And that's really cool. It allows you to do things that wouldn't be possible to remove otherwise because the filament will literally dissolve. Having other types of filament that are conductive, for example, like one of these filaments I'm holding right here is actually, let me stop sharing for a second. This is glow in the dark. And it's also kind of like translucent, like you can shine light through it. So there's a lot of different types of specialized filament. And some of them probably are varying levels of conductive. The problem, of course, is like resistance and heat. So in electrical circuits, as you pass more energy through something, or as it's on for longer, it gets warm. And when you have, you know, filament that heats up at around like I don't know, like 100 and something degrees Celsius, that it means that at a certain point you can get it hot enough, probably through normal operation, to potentially melt it or cause other sorts of unforeseen abnormalities. Now, I don't totally know why we haven't seen some version of this, because I think there are versions of 3D printing, like metal sintering and other things, that can do this and do it in a way that's probably totally fine for electrical circuits. But yeah, I think multi-level circuit boards that have conductive 3D printed filament are definitely on the horizon, because it's kind of the next obvious step. If I'm able to make multiple layers like this lithophane that have different types of colors on different levels, then it means that I could probably start to level those things in various interesting configurations for things like electronics. So making a circuit board out of a 3D printer might not be totally far-fetched for very long. I just wonder, like, what are we going to do with the heat? Are we going to need other specialized layers for removing heat? Yeah, it's very interesting to kind of like think about like what the next step is for 3D printing now that we have kind of solved the problem of automatically swapping between materials while making a print, because this lithophane would have been super, super annoying to do. And I would have had to spend a lot of time sitting next to the printer in order to do it. Now that we have this sort of automated process to swap different filaments and create things that would have been too hard or almost impossible to create before, that's pretty cool. Like making this two-sided and yet thick enough to be like substantial was really annoying. Like I would have had to be around and change the filament out for every single layer of this print. So I am really impressed by what's going on. And I think that, yes, things like a circuit board that you could put together with a 3D printer would be maybe next on the list. The problem, of course, being how do you solder something to a 3D printed circuit? I guess we still have to figure that one out. Maybe very, 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 very low temperature solder and some sort of paste to make it all come together. I don't know. I feel like the answer somehow is just paste. Yeah, okay, cool. I'm not going crazy. James, thank you for verifying that one for me. Oh, so here's another thought. If the circuit just has a series of empty tubes, you can also use a syringe to just inject conductive ink. Yeah, no, if you could potentially have like a fluid-based circuit where you just create pathways for that fluid to go that are conductive, that would also do the job there. Yeah, there's a lot of really like creative things you can do with high precision 3D printing that has the ability to print different materials. As I'm finding out, this is still a bit wasteful because the print head needs to be purged each time that it's switching filament. So one of the nicer Prusas that are like the cost of a used Honda, they are actually able to have multiple print heads all like ready to operate that don't need to have their filament swapped out. So having 4 print heads is certainly one solution to that problem. And they are able to make some pretty incredible looking prints. They're able to do it faster. And yeah, it's really impressive to see what the bleeding edges in this. I think I'm kind of halfway there between like an Ender, which is very, very basics, a Prusa, which is like much nicer. It's going to work like as a workhorse. You're not going to have as much downtime. And then now at a Bamboo, where I have all these nice features like being able to automatically swap filaments, the next step up is like an industrial printer, like a Prusa XL. And I don't think I'm ready to make that investment quite yet, but I'm happy to kind of explain a little bit about how this works. And I do want to show off, let me see if I can share the screen for the Bamboo. Yeah, so I do want to show off just what this actually looks like. Let's see if I can open this. All right, so this was the print that I chose to do, and it was really cool to be able to go through and change the objects here. So when you get a downloaded version of like all these different layers from the, what am I trying to say? It's from the Lithophane creator. When you upload something, it downloads a zip file and then gives you all these different layers, which are all imported on top of each other. So what's cool is then you go through and it says like cyan, magenta, white, yellow, and you basically just need to match the color to the file name, and everything will be cool. That'll be it. So the way that this is printed, I think, is also pretty cool. I'm going to let it slice really quick, and then I'll show you like the way that it actually kind of like executes this. So if you want to create multiple colors, right, then the CYMK process is pretty clever. It, in this case, is using like thicker layers of white to make it so that it absorbs more light. So the darkest parts are actually very, very thick layers of white material. What's nice about that is it adds the ability to do some shading and other things that you can't really do otherwise. Otherwise, you would need like to add black to the mix, and we just don't have that many nozzles. So as you can see, it's actually mostly shading for like a lot of the layers with white. But then when we get down to the color layers, we can see where it's actually starting to print full color, but again in CYMK. And it's basically calculating what the interaction of these layers will look like when you shine light through them. So I found this to be a pretty informative, and it's basically designed to be viewed by this first layer over. It's designed to be viewed by the top layer over here, where all the depth from this is kind of like imparted after the color has been done. Yeah, I found this to be really, really cool. So if you're interested in 3D printing, this, like I said, this would be a huge pain to do prior to this automatic filament swapping. And while we're mostly just talking about color right now, changing up between different types of filaments to create potentially like 3D printed circuits, or also things that involve like washable or dissolvable filaments are now totally possible. Maybe I need to make a prototype myself and get this started. Yeah, I have to say, it is pretty cool. I've been enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. I was kind of tepid about trying it at first, but I've definitely come around to the idea. So I also have to say that it prints really fast. So I printed this mask, which is really big, by the way. And it took about 5 hours to print, maybe a little less. Now, I do admit that I set this to the absolute fastest setting, and the first print actually failed. So like there was some issue with it, but this is a larger version of a geisha mask that I printed before. It came out pretty well, I have to say. It's a good like glow through mask. Like if I want to add like light to it, I could totally do that and have it glow through. I'm blind now. So it seems really good for that. And then also I made it so large that it's actually like slightly wider than my eyes are apart. The previous version of this mask was way too small and it kind of poked you in the eyes as a result. This one is like really, really big. So I didn't wear this one last night because guess what? There's no mouth hole. So nobody can hear you and you're just breathing directly onto plastic. Not a huge fan of that, but it did come out really well. It's great for painting. And if I want to, I can add color to the surface of this mask. Now, of course, that would dramatically increase the print time because it would have to swap on every single layer if I'm printing it upright and then adding color to the face. But if I don't care, you know, it used to take like probably like 8 or 9 hours to print a mask like this at the fastest settings on my Ender. So I really am impressed by the quality and the speed that some of these newer printers are able to do. I know we were just talking like a couple of weeks ago about which printer I should get. Now that I've got the Bamboo, and I'm working with the A1 in this case, it is able to print like, I would say like prop quality stuff that looks really good and is easy to rely on just working without complaint. Yeah, so positive review for the Bamboo Labs Ender, or sorry, the Bamboo Labs A1 versus the Ender, and also the Prusa that I've been working with before. Really great results. And I think I showed off before some of the other color prints I've done, like being able to print color on a specific surface and draw on it. I found that to be incredibly cool. So if you're into 3D printing, then we got a couple stuff this week. We've got the Lithophane. We've got the custom SAO emergency creator, and then also some cool processes for potentially adding different materials. So all super cool stuff. For the mask, okay, yeah, so for the mask, support types are dissolvable materials. I use tree supports for something like that. Exactly. So there's different materials or different geometries you can use to create supports for a 3D print like this, which is clearly going to have some overhangs and other stuff. Like the eyes here need support in order to prevent the tops here from sagging. So I use tree supports or like organic supports. They look really nice. They're super easy to remove. And I didn't really need to use a different type of filament to make the supports on this. It came apart pretty easily. So tree supports are my recommended. I really hate the like default like boxy like supports. Like I don't think they work well. They're really hard to remove. But if you've got like dissolvable supports, then they probably work just fine. All right. So if I didn't end up being wearing that mask, then what did I end up doing? Well, I wanted to at least mention or acknowledge my Halloween costume. For some reason, LED masks are just not a thing in Los Angeles. I didn't see a single other person wearing even one of the default LED masks. And I've been doing these for, I think this is my 3rd year now. So I don't know how I'm continuing to get away with this. I did the thing where I waited until the last second and decided I wanted to do a costume, and then did something that I thought was kind of clever and got a great reaction and felt guilty because so many other people worked so hard on their costumes. So I got lucky this year. I decided to be Loeb. And if you don't remember Loeb, when we were talking about AI image generators, we were talking about how there are some weird quirks with the way that these AI image generators function. So let me see if I can share my screen and I'll talk a little bit about Loeb. So I attended a talk. I think it was called like How I Learned to Live with Loeb or something like that. It was very silly. But Loeb is a fictional character, and some might argue a cryptid that was something that was continuously generated in kind of like they were saying like a void space of like this AI models programming. So the kind of legend here is that this is a character that is spontaneously created by some types of AI models and is very persistent. Like even if you try to steer the AI model away from it, it'll continuously create this weird lady that's kind of like got like red sunken in cheeks and is very spooky. So this was, scary enough that a lot of people passed it around, and it got the nickname as like the spooky AI demon that like appears in various AI generated images. Do I believe it's a demon? No, but I do think it's funny, and it was a great talk. So I wanted to make a highly niche costume that was based on Loeb. So I downloaded a bunch of Loeb photos, all AI generated, and I started walking around, changing between them and kind of gauging people's reactions. So that went pretty well until, and it was getting a mixed response. There wasn't really a ton of people who were like strongly reacting to it until I settled on this one. So this is actually an AI generated face that I made based on Loeb that is just like smiling very creepily. And like the instructions to the AI were to make it like very unsettling, very like uncanny valley, I think was the exact wording of the prompt. So I walked around with this and a Grim Reaper costume, like kind of in the middle. And it really made drunk people freak out. A lot of people shouted, screamed, or otherwise demanded to get a picture. And again, I felt guilty because like this is like, for one, an AI generated image. I think that they were associating it with Smile 2, which just came out. And admittedly, this is a very creepy smile. So I think that might have been the reason why I got such a reaction to it. But pretty impressed by the reaction. Like a lot of people really liked it. And again, like did you guys see anybody wearing these masks? Like it seems like they are just not a thing in Los Angeles. Last year, I also got one that had the additional feature where you could actually do animation. So you could play like a GIF on it and actually have like a moving or talking face. This one doesn't support that, but it does support a high-pitched whine that's always going off when it's on. So that's fun. But yeah, this was one of my favorite costumes I've done, if only for the reactions it got. I think that my original LED costume was right after Queen Elizabeth died, and it had the Queen's face on it making a speech and the same Grim Reaper costume, and that got a lot of groans, which was my goal. This one just frightened people. Now, originally, I was going to be the Boeing logo and then be in the Grim Reaper costume, but their logo is actually not super recognizable, so there's a lot of white space too, so I ended up deciding not to go with it. So that's my costume, and hopefully you guys think it's cool. I enjoyed doing it. What am I drinking today? This is Klub Mate. It is the favorite hacker drink. It's like a carbonated tea of hackers in Europe. And I first encountered it at the C3 conference, which I'm getting excited to go to in December. And it kind of, as somebody at Hackaday Supercon says, it kind of tastes like a cigarette, but in a good way. And I find that when you're working on hacking projects, this is the go-to drink to just like anxiously like continue working and it's a good substitute for coffee, and I enjoy it. It's also extremely expensive in Los Angeles, so to me it's very fancy. So I often have this right before we go to a conference, and I got a bunch of it for hackers who are going to be going to a meetup at the local hackerspace here, Null Space Labs as well. Cool mask, but no cat ears. I know. Yeah, that is definitely something that I could do better. Average cost per print, average time per print. So this filament cost me about between $15 and $17 a roll, and this mask printed in 5 hours. This is also at 15% infill. So this mask is very light, but quite strong because it's ESUN PLA+. And aside from their recent data breach, security misconfiguration, where they reset all their customers' passwords to their email addresses, they're a good company and they make really good 3D printed filament. Maybe not security-wise, but filament, yes. So yeah, that's the price point on that. I would say this mask probably cost me like less than $1 to make, like 80 cents maybe, like if I break it down, because there's still plenty of filament on the spool, and this, yeah, printed really fast. A gateway drug to cigarettes? God, I hope not. Oh my gosh, I hope not. All right, so I wanted to show off the very best costume of all. So I walked around West Hollywood, Los Angeles yesterday, and I did that because it has by far the best costumes. Now, I made the mistake of going out the day before, and that was when the Dodgers won. And I could not tell if people were happy or angry, honestly, because they were just lighting things on fire. There was a bus lit on fire. I got shot at by shot at in the general direction with rubber bullets by police officers on horses, who then charged the crowd and tried to drive them into more police officers. It was crazy. So it really does depend on which day you decide to go out in Los Angeles, especially if you're not up on sports. It can be very surprising to suddenly have the city be partially on fire and then hear a bunch of explosions and police on horses out of nowhere. But moving on, this building was super famous for being vandalized in a night where a graffiti artist went in and they tagged basically every single floor of these large luxury condo buildings that were abandoned by the developers who were working on them. This was the absolute best costume. I don't know how long it took this person to put this costume together. One year I went as a Dell computer, and I really put a lot of energy into it. And I was basically in like the equivalent of like a refrigerator or like an air conditioner box. It was really big. So when you have a costume that restricts your mobility and also like is hard to move around in, it restricts your visibility and your mobility at the same time. It is a terrible experience. West Hollywood was crammed with people. You can tell that this person got their floors damaged. Also, you can see there's some damage there from people just shoving into them. So I don't know what this person went through to both create this costume and also exist in one of the most crowded areas that I've been in recent memory. But I have to say, I've already seen this costume on TikTok. I had the pleasure to see it myself. They looked tired at the end of the night. They looked like they had been tossed around and bumped into and jostled around all night. And even my costume was pretty hard to see stuff in. So with just these like slitty little windows and no visibility on your sides in a giant crowd, this person is an absolute legend. Their costume is incredible. And it actually does, they went through the trouble of like mimicking some of the real graffiti on this. So I don't know, like if this is like an art project between multiple people, if this person is just like a hero themselves. But I just had to shout this out as by far the most like LA local, like obvious, but like nobody else did it costume, because everybody's been talking about this building. It's reshaped the entire downtown area because you can't go near it now without this giant police presence because it became notorious. So the fact that like we've all been talking about it all year and one person had the time and energy to dress up at this building specifically. First of all, I don't know if they had a friend that was the second building that they lost in West Hollywood, and if they did, that's very sad. But yeah, I was entranced by this. This was my costume. I thought it went off pretty well. As I said, it's really startled drunk people, and they reacted with surprise and fear. And I feel like perhaps I didn't really earn that with the level of attention to detail that I put in versus this hero who like hand painted this graffiti to match like the actual graffiti on the building. But I do feel like it went pretty well. So Halloween is one of my favorite holidays, the other being the 4th of July and New Year's, as those are all nights where there's a lot of explosions in Los Angeles. So yeah, lots of fun. I really enjoyed it. And I am excited to apparently do another Halloween for all the people who are blowing off some steam when they don't have work on Saturday. So I'll see if there's any more really good costumes. I'm gonna have to mix it up and come up with some new ideas. So if you've got any ideas for the LED mask or any other 3D printed masks, I am still costume hunting to do some cool and fun things. I have to say, I really did feel guilty that all these awesome, talented people thought my costume was cool when I'm just like, you can get this for $50 off of Amazon and then like, generate an image. But whatever, if it comes together, it comes together. I was happy. I had my giant, I think they were called like weird, like cryptid, like opium bird costume from last year that my friend unfortunately refused to wear. But I do have a backup costume for the rest of everything if it comes to that. All right, so we have more news to talk about today. Let me get that up. There we go. So depressing. All right, so we started out with all the fun things, and now let's talk about a data breach that I probably am involved in. So we have United Healthcare saying that 100 million people had their data stolen in the Change Healthcare breach. Often these companies, are either subsidiaries of each other and transferring data back and forth for various reasons, or just have a lot of access to data. And it looks like in this case, a lot of people have been impacted by this data breach. I myself have been contacted about this data breach. So this is a huge amount of sensitive information. It is basically the worst case scenario. Your health insurance information, your health information such as medical records, providers, diagnoses, medicines, test results, images. So actually like images of your care and treatment, billing, claims and payment information, and other things like your social security number. So this is like a pretty complete breach of data from anybody who's receiving like health insurance services through United Healthcare, which a lot of people are. So that is clearly going to have impacts on a lot of things. For one, people can be targeted with that information. They can have people reach out to them for scams. And then also they can have that information traded to businesses who don't care where it comes from in order to start targeting those people more specifically. You also have people maybe being denied for various things based on that information being public and the insurance companies having access to it. So a lot of negative things still going on with this data breach. It's looking to be a lot more impactful than it seemed initially because of the absolute horrific scale of information that is involved in this breach. So next up, we have two potentially related stories. First, we say that United States agencies are saying that Chinese hackers have breached multiple telecommunication providers, often with the intent of spying on customers. So the thought here is that if hackers are able to get into telecommunications companies, then they can get access to all sorts of sensitive things, including, as we talked about, I think it was 2 weeks ago, wiretapping systems. So when the United States decides that it is time to legally wiretap someone in response to a court order or whatever, then there are systems in place to do this. There are technical systems that are able to single traffic out and then deliver it based on a legal request. So it seems like China was able to or Chinese affiliated hackers were able to break into this, allowing them to have the same access as those wiretapping devices to people's information. And obviously, if they're targeting specific people they want information from, then this means they have the ability to sift through that person's data without them ever knowing. So that is, to me, crazy, but an obvious target. And it's not surprising that Verizon, AT&T, and Lumen Technologies have been named as companies that these state-sponsored hacking groups have been going after. And Canada has also been a target in these types of attacks, with their telecommunications agencies being the gateway to spying on people in the country who China might be interested in. Then, again, potentially relatedly, we have Free, France's second largest internet service provider, confirming a data breach after a leak that has dropped a lot of customer information. Now, the concern here is that the customer information that's been released is bank account information. And this is being offered on a breach forums post that is claiming that there's lots and lots of 5.11 million IBAN numbers that are up for sale. Now, this is not enough typically to initiate an unauthorized transfer. So you can't just debit someone based on their IBAN number, but it's still really not good. And I'm sure cyber criminals could find a way to make this information useful. It might just require a little bit more interaction with the victim. Next up, we have just straight up cyber warfare. So Russia is attempting to infect new recruits in the Ukrainian armed forces with malware, and it's doing so by staging a weird fake civil defense persona. Now, the intent here is to try to make people download malware while also sowing dissent and trying to spy on people. Now, they are trying to distribute this by creating civil defense pages that are spread on social media and Telegram that are trying to make it so anybody who joins them, for one, is distrustful of their fellow Ukrainians, so it's spreading misinformation. And for two, downloads special software that's supposed to be like helpful or, like have some sort of purpose that actually just infects them and gives them step-by-step instructions on how to do things that make their device more vulnerable, such as disabling Play Protect. So these instructional videos showing how to make your phone more vulnerable so they're easier to infect are all part of the strategy to try to basically gain access to the devices of new recruits. And as they're given orders, as they're deployed, have these Russian spies be able to tell what's going on by having a deep-rooted access to their mobile devices. So even if their like military supplied devices might be better protected, they still might leak details of their deployment or other information. And these infected devices might play a key role in Russia being able to determine what's going on the Ukrainian side. So this kind of integrated cyber warfare is like kind of an obvious step, right? You have new recruits going into the battlefield. They might not be there by choice if they've been conscripted. And in this case, it means that you might be able to trick them into allowing you to look over their shoulder and seeing everything they're doing while they are deployed. All right, so we have a new tool that shows off a bypass for Google Chrome's cookie encryption system. So this is something that was supposed to make cookies harder to steal. However, a lot of information stealers have simply bypassed this. And the methods by which they were bypassing it were pretty well known in the hacker community. At this point, so many people have been doing it that security researchers have decided it is now time to just, basically letting everyone know how this works so that we have a shot at fixing it. So this is in response to application-bound encryption. And this means that you now need to do some additional steps in order to steal cookies or reuse cookies like you used to be able to do from a web browser. Now, the researcher here found a way to bypass this new feature. And the only caveat here is that it does require you to be an administrator. So if the person is logged in as an administrator, then that just means they might need to type in a password, or there is maybe a little bit of user interaction involved here. But it still means that it is within the realm of possibility to still steal these cookies, even if it requires a slightly higher bar to do. Next up, we have a Russian national charged with creating the Red Line information stealer malware. Now, this is something that we've talked about many times because it is one of the most notorious information stealers. And the charge here is that Maxim Rudimentov has been accessing and maintaining the infrastructure behind this for many years now and has a clear association with this malware operation. So it is unclear whether or not this hacker is in custody or has been arrested, but the United States Department of Justice announced a number of charges, including access device fraud, conspiracy to commit computer intrusion, and money laundering, which are pretty typical for these sorts of info stealer operations, where someone's creating software and then allowing other people to use it. Obviously, they can't report that. So money laundering is typically the way that they are able to actually spend that cash. They are facing up to 35 years in prison. But again, it is not totally clear if the threat actor has been arrested. All right, so this is a pretty sneaky and I guess just paranoia-inducing path to go after someone's information. Imagine making a call to your bank to check on suspicious information, and your phone automatically routes that call to the threat actor instead. And now you're in a scam call center talking to people who are trying to steal your money. So that is the scam behind a new fake call malware feature that prevents people from dialing their actual bank. So not only will it attempt to steal your information and spy on your device, it's able to activate your camera, it's able to activate your microphone, but it's also able to replace your actual dialer, and it'll import your contacts and look kind of like the original thing. But instead, you're opening a malicious application where if you were to dial specific numbers, it'll just connect you to a scammer's call center. Now, you can try to call the number as many times as you want, but it'll intercept it and continuously prevent you from calling the actual legitimate number for your bank. That's pretty crazy to me. And in this week's confusing diagram of the week, we have like what seems like a pretty straightforward attack in which you try to call or connect to your bank, and then instead that connection is intercepted and rerouted to the attacker. So nothing tremendously new here. It's just very frustrating where if someone is telling you, hey, my computer is hijacking my connection and sending it over to something else, it's like, that sounds like something that might not be true, but it might actually be true now that we have this handy feature for the fake call bank stealer. So this is a supply chain attack. So Lottie Files is a popular free way of creating animations for websites. And this is apparently the victim of a supply chain attack in which somebody got developer credentials and then added malicious code that was just a crypto dumper. So this is going to be, a crypto drainer. So this is something that once it requests access to your crypto wallet, if you say yes, immediately transfers all your funds away. And it tries to masquerade as an application that should be connecting to your crypto wallet, but instead will just steal everything. So I'm not particularly surprised that there's like crypto crime going on. That's something that we see a lot of. But again, like a specific supply chain attack targeted at crypto wallets is something that affects a very specific community. And this does seem to be at least somewhat effective. Apparently, one victim lost $723,000 worth of Bitcoin due to this supply chain compromise. So there are a number of user interaction steps here, like they need to connect it to their wallet. They need to have this particular infected software version installed. But I mean, that's not a super high bar. So when you open the test network, it prompts you to connect to your wallet. And if you do, then it just steals all your money. So be careful out there. Definitely crazy to see some of these free tools be the victim of supply chain attacks because threat actors know they're really popular. Now this one sucks. So over 1,000 online stores have been hacked to show fake product listings. And these products are hard to find things. They're things that maybe are sold out or trending. And they're also using SEO tactics to make it so they appear at the top of search results. So these will be legitimate stores that have been operating for a good amount of time, and they will have their listings hijacked to then create things they do not have and reroute the payment to the threat actors themselves. Now, it looks like the threat actors have not so much like tried to hijack the actual stores so that they are stealing all the payments. Instead, for the infected listings, it goes to a different page that is outside the scope of the normal store that just straight up steals their information. So this is a pretty sophisticated operation. And the fact that they have used the access to these stores to not just like take them down or take them over, but instead to insert strategically and then SEO boost these listings is pretty crazy. So again, the purchases here are not necessarily going through the stores. Oftentimes the purchases are instead going through a phishing website that is kind of attached to these listings. So I've never really seen these sorts of attacks before, but if you're looking to buy something from an online store and you notice that that listing doesn't look anything like what the rest of that store sells, it's very, very possible that that store could have been the victim of one of these attacks. So just be aware that it's out there. It's always scary buying something from like a smaller online store, especially if they don't seem very professional, but now you have another reason to potentially be paranoid. All right, so this is a fix that is not going to be applied to many cameras. So these pan tilt zoom cameras apparently have a 0-day vulnerabilities that can allow somebody to take over the camera and use it as a pivot point to get deeper into the network. Now this means they could, maybe identify like other devices on the network that are vulnerable and start attacking them, or they could just watch the cameras and maybe that's enough to do a data breach. So let's see. Greynoise discovered CVE 2024-8956 after its AI-powered threat detection tool SIFT detected unusual activity on its honeypot network that did not match any known threats. So it looks like somebody attempted to use wget to download like a further exploit, and this tipped them off that there was a 0-day vulnerability here that somebody was beginning to deploy. So there's a weak authentication problem in the camera's light HTTPD web server, and that lets unauthenticated users basically do whatever they want. And at that point, they can access the camera, they can view the camera, they can execute arbitrary code. it really does allow them to do pretty much whatever they want. And there's a lot of these cameras that are now end of life and will not be receiving fixes. So a lot of fun IoT devices that are now known to be vulnerable to a 0-day vulnerability that gives somebody complete control over it that are in sensitive locations. So a lot of these are not going to get patched, and it seems like it is not actually possible to patch several of these. So yeah, keep your eyes out for taken over cameras which have no ability to be fixed because they're end of life, potentially in very sensitive locations. All right, so we also have some consequences in the continued operation power off. This is an international operation that is targeting the distributed denial of service industry, which has become very popular in the form of stressors or booters, which kick services off or cause a lot of stress on services by directing a lot of junk traffic at them. Now, there was a website available to basically rate these, and people who are trying to use these services need like a marketplace to figure out which ones are good and which ones don't work. And this was a website that allowed hackers to kind of like talk about which ones worked for them, which ones didn't. This website was seized and the operators were arrested. Apparently, the police are also reaching out to people who are involved with this website to let them know that their activities were illegal and that continued cyber offenses would lead to prosecution. So interesting to see this crackdown specifically on this segment of the cybercrime market. I think that stressors are something that a lot of people use, and some people might not be aware how illegal it is to like rent a tool like this to attack a service or like try to take down a website. But obviously they are very illegal, and using them for revenge or something else is probably going to get you in a lot of trouble, especially now that the police have been so laser focused on these sorts of services. Now, LastPass is warning of a fake technical support center scam that is trying to steal sensitive information from customers. And this is something that we have talked about in other contexts, like GitHub comments, where people are posing as somebody who's figured out a fix and then drops a file that's actually malicious. In this case, people are leaving comments that are then upvoted with a phone number that is incorrect. This is something that is getting people confused because they'll call, someone will pick up, they'll seem to be from LastPass, they'll try to help, and people are then discovering, like, you know, whether in the Play Store or when they are on another software site, they'll see these 5-star reviews, they will see a phone number associated with it, and they'll just call it. Now, especially if they have a hard time getting through to normal support, or if they otherwise are just looking this up without looking at the official support number, it seems like this is something that would actually trick people. So I'm, again, unsurprised that this is a attack vector that has been expanding. We've seen this kind of targeting other people as well. And any support site or any community site that allows like unmoderated posts, some of which could contain malicious information, is going to be victim to these sorts of attacks over a long enough period of time. So you can expect to see these sorts of attacks expanding. These are scam campaigns that are using all sorts of avenues to get people to install things that usually lead to things like Luma Stealer. But in the case of the LastPass attacks, it's obviously going to lead to a much larger breach if hackers are able to successfully get the information contained in someone's LastPass. And then we also have OpenAI releasing a ChatGPT search extension, but this is basically just a search hijacker. It just redirects your search to them in a way that could have some concerns for privacy. So if this is something you are trying to determine whether or not it was useful enough to download, the answer is no, it's kind of not. So yeah, I would, long and short of this one is basically you install the extension. It makes it so that it automatically redirects your search queries to ChatGPT and it spits back a response. It's not really much faster than just doing this manually. And overall, I was not super impressed by this. All right, so that is just about all the time we have for today. And that's all the news we have for today. That's actually great because usually we have a lot of attacks to talk about, but most things have been relatively quiet this week, unless I'm missing something. If I am, then feel free to drop it in the Discord community. But yeah, so I'm really looking forward to spending the rest of the day at Hackaday Supercon. I think I'll probably see several of you there, hopefully. And also, I'm going to have my friend Andrew, aka Make It Hackin', who's going to be in town visiting. He actually came over and did an interview with us at Black Hat and talked about some of the really cool full color process badges that SAOs that he created. And this was using a new PCB process that just came out recently. I was super excited to see it, and I'm going to have to see what he created for this event. It's going to be crazy. I don't know if he's going to be very impressed by my badge, but we'll give it a try. So anyway, let's see. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I am honored to be included among that list. All right, so that's all the time we have today. If you want to check out more about Supercon, stay tuned to the Discord server and also the my Mastodon account. I'm going to be showing off some of the things that we are encountering there. I'm going to be bringing my friend Davis to hopefully record some video. So I know that last year we did a roundup of Hackaday Supercon. We're going to be doing another one this year of all the best stuff there. So we'll probably be talking about it on the stream on Wednesday, but look forward to some cutouts as well. And hopefully I will see some cool creative hackers there. If you're in the Southern California area, we're also going to be doing a meetup on Saturday. You can check out the results or the details on meetup.com for Null Space Labs, but I'll also post the details on my social media. That's going to be a cool meetup for people who are involved in Meshtastic or who just want to check out Null Space Labs from Supercon. So if you want to check it out, it's going to be free at Null Space Labs on Saturday at 9 o'clock. All right, everyone, that's all we have this time. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out. It's going to be a lot of fun, hopefully seeing some people in person, and we'll see you again on Wednesday. If you want to support the stream, you can always go to, hopefully, www.varonis.com/Kody. That's Kody. Looks like it might not be working for everyone, but it was working for me. It's working for James, so it seems like it's working at least some of the time. So let's everyone at Varonis know that you appreciate the stream and you want us to keep going live. So it doesn't cost you anything to let them know that you appreciate us. All right, everyone. See you next time, and enjoy your weekend. Goodbye.